Yeah.
And you've got New Balance too.
Yeah.
You've got to be over 50 to wear New Balance.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not
They
anymore.
rebranded.
They're in.
Yeah.
They went for a full rebrand.
They
Now
did
they're
a good job.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
Yeah.
They're right in. It's great.
So you're cool and old.
And I was wearing Converse years ago.
Sure. Well, these are I can't believe they used to wear these as basketball shoes.
It was wild, eh?
Yeah, it's like, who plays basketball?
Yeah,
With that,
With
yeah.
these. Exactly. Born ready to rock. Welcome back to the Chip Lunch Podcast. It's awesome to have you along with us. And I've got a former regular co-host on the podcast with me, Ethan.
It hurts.
Welcome.
It hurts. Hello, Joel.
Welcome back.
It is good to be back.
You've finished college exams.
I am done. My last exam was yesterday. And
Amazing.
If you're watching this, my last exam was weeks ago.
You
Um,
smash it.
So that's the last exam
I reckon,
ever?
yeah, that's the last exam for this year, and I reckon I wrote two of the worst essays I've ever written in my life.
Oh no.
Like it was. I got out of the exam and I was like, oh, what did I write?
Which subjects were
It
those?
was doctrine. So not the one you want to write really badly. But no, I got some words on a page that were correct.
Right.
So that was good.
Are they both doctrine essays? Sorry.
I had to write 3 essays in 2 hours. So I wrote,
Really?
yeah, which was okay. I wrote 1 essay on humanity, 1 essay on sin, and 1 essay on the Lord's Supper.
Oh.
And I was in the Lord's Supper one, and I'm like, I was cooking. I was like, this is really
Hey,
good. This is
now
really
we're-
good.
now
This
we're
is
on.
really good. And then I hit the next question, and I was like, oh no.
Did you get to did you get to choose? Like
Yeah,
what
so
you write on?
you get 5 options,
Oh, okay.
and then and the Lord's Supper was the one that you knew was going to be in it. So I had like really prepped that one really well.
That's why you were cooking on
That
it.
was why I was cooking on it. And
Cooking the
So
Lord's
what
Supper.
happens if it's not there when, the one that's always there, you prepare?
Well, no, that one was they like sent you the question beforehand. So they're like, this one's going to be, this is the question and this is what's going to be in it. And then you've got to study 12 doctrines. And out of those 12 doctrines, there will be 5 questions
You'll pick
asked.
one.
And you got to pick 2.
Right.
So did you not study a couple of the 12 doctrines?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I studied 6 or 7 out of the 12. And I only got 2, which was sin and humanity, which were the ones that I...
Plus the Lord's Supper.
And then the Lord's Supper. So I studied 8 doctrines.
Well, that's right.
But yeah, so that
So
was...
there's a bit of mathematics involved in study, isn't
And that was helpfully, someone
chance.
else did that maths for me. They were like, all right, if you really think about it, you probably only need to study 6 or 7
Right.
because it's pretty likely that you'll get 2, particularly since we kind of are aware of, like, based on past questions, like people were going really deep into it. That was great.
Oh, so the questions have been asked previously, like, oh, they won't ask that one again.
Or they will ask that one because they've asked that every year. Or like, yeah.
Yeah, the old past exam papers were always very...
That's it.
Very useful.
I've been there 4 times, so this is never the last time you study.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I hope. Yeah. Yeah. It will not be the last time I study probably. But yeah, there's always more to learn, which is good. But yeah, so I'm done and I'm free and I'm back on the podcast,
Welcome.
ready to cast
Podding.
podding.
Cast pods.
That's it.
Pea
That's what I'm
pods.
here for.
We're 2 peas in a pod. Those beautiful husky tones you can hear is our guest today on the Chip Lunch Podcast, who is Dave. Welcome.
Thank you.
I feel like
Good to have you, Dave.
I find it interesting that a lot of people call you Dave Gaskell. You know when you usually just say Joel or
Yeah.
Ethan, but a lot of people say Dave Gaskell. I think maybe it just works
That's
well
right.
off the tongue.
Well, it's handy having a name which is a bit unusual, and because people remember it.
Yes, that could be what it is.
And my wife is a teacher, and having the name Gaskell, because my father was a teacher, did her well over the years.
Oh, I see. Do we know where is the background of Gaskell? Do you have any idea?
So it's if there's 20 people in Sydney in the phone book, there's 3 pages in Manchester.
From Manchester.
Okay,
Okay.
so on the DNA test, it's Irish, Scottish,
Mm-hmm.
with a little bit of Viking thrown in for
Good measure.
yeah,
Back
that's
in the day.
Yeah.
And so most of my family outside of Australia, well, actually, I have no other family in Australia, are all from Manchester.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that means that I can always truly support the only true football team.
Oh, who's he going to say?
Yeah,
Which one are you, City or United?
Oh,
Big team.
Man, you. I mean,
Oh, of course.
please. City, that's the money team.
Yeah, I know. I'm well
true,
aware
true,
of that.
true. Yeah.
So I have been to Old Trafford.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Very good.
But I have never been able to see a Man U game live because it's almost impossible to, unless you
Oh.
remember.
You didn't see the one where they came out? It was the
I
opening
did.
game at
I
the
did,
Olympic
went down to
Stadium?
Melbourne.
Oh, in
Yep.
Melbourne.
Yes.
Because they played in Sydney and Melbourne, I think. Because I
Yeah.
went to the one in Sydney.
Yes, I went to one in Melbourne, which was like 2 years ago. I flew down there, but never watch a soccer match on an AFL field because being right behind the goals means you're 30 metres away from the action.
Yeah,
It's very hard work.
right.
Yeah,
That
because
is-
I saw Australia versus Iran, 1997 World Cup qualifier.
Yep.
It's very hard to see down at the MCG.
That's right. So I've been to Iran.
Mm. Have you?
Yes.
Went to Tehran? Is that where you've been?
I've worked in Iran. The
Yeah.
largest job I ever did was in Iran.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Wow.
There's so many. I'm so excited to get into the very, very many stories that we can draw out of you, Dave. But before
Well, you have a bit of inside knowledge, though, don't you?
just a little bit. But I'll actually probably be a little bit more quiet because it'll be fun to watch Joel figure things out.
Okay.
And move us along. But I'll ask questions when I think of questions. But it would be good to start with this question, which is, Dave, how do you like your chips?
Well, I like my chips the proper way,
Okay.
yes, which is soft on the inside, super crispy on the outside,
Yep.
and just salt.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll
give it to you.
I reckon I am catching up. Our team is
You might be.
catching up.
You might be. Do you ever do vinegar?
Oh, and a little bit of vinegar.
Oh, so you've got that
There it
English
is, there it is.
background.
That's
That's
what
right.
it was. Yeah.
That's right.
They do love.
Oh, I lost it.
Why are you whistling?
I was trying to do Rule Britannia.
And,
but
and you know, in Australia, the largest use of vinegar is in salt vinegar chips.
Really? Yes.
really?
That
Is
is
that our largest use of vinegar? That is
Yeah.
funny as.
That's
not even in cleaning. You can use it for
right.
cleaning.
No, salt and vinegar chips.
That's awesome. How
Yeah.
good.
Right.
That's
And
amazing.
it actually has a little bit of ethanol in it.
Does it?
Yes. Vinegar's a wine.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
a spirit.
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't realise that.
I mean, chicken salt, now, pure chicken salt,
Mm.
it actually does have chicken in it.
See, I thought that was an old
A
wives' tale.
misnomer. No.
Yeah, yeah.
Proper chicken salt is actually boiled down fat of the chicken and the skin.
Because it's like chicken stock, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, chicken, actual real chicken,
Right.
as well as chicken salt
Okay.
stock. But the one that you love that you get from the chippy has got another secret ingredient in it. MSG.
SG. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I love it.
And-
I'm aware of that, and it brings
Great
brings
joy.
my taste buds great joy.
But commercially available chicken salt is often labelled as vegan, which sort of is
Oh yeah,
a bit of a misnomer, isn't
because
it?
it's not actually any. Yeah.
Not super
So-
accurate.
Yeah.
It contains chicken flavouring.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Whatever that is. Yeah. Whatever that means.
If it's chicken flavouring and it's vegan, it's probably not chicken.
No, it's probably not.
No.
Probably not.
So, and I do have a favourite place for
Yes.
which I found by accident.
Oh.
Okay, which is Binner's Farm, which is at Helensburgh.
Okay.
So if you come off the roundabout at Helensburgh, off the highway, there's a food van there,
I've
Yeah.
seen that.
and I've driven past there many, many times, and I actually was hungry as one day, and I
Yeah.
Yeah.
pulled over. Actually, I just wanted a cup of coffee, I think,
Yeah.
and they will cook some chips. Oh, we've got to cook it for you. So they're cooked. They're
Fresh.
not just dipped out.
Excellent.
Cooked, made to order.
Yes, made to order and thrice cooked,
Ooh.
right? Which is the only way to do chips.
That'll make it crispy.
Oh, I'm doing
Yep.
this weekend.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. Now I went to uni in the 60s and the 70s, right? So we did part time, and so you'd go to the Roundhouse at University of New South Wales, and it was sort of lectures started at 6 o'clock, so you'd have a little something to eat before you.
Yeah.
I'd have dinner maybe at 9:30 at night when I got home.
Yep.
And whatever you had was dot and chips. And of course, they'd pour out the big load of chips in the big thing, and there's people lined up with their little trays.
Yep.
And you had to time it just right, so that you either got the absolute first fresh dump,
Yep.
or you got, even better still, those lovely little crispy bits right at the end.
Yeah, nice.
Right, but in the middle, it was sort of a waste of time.
Yeah, right.
Just
Oh,
like
no,
slightly
go-
cold, slightly
Go in front of
goopy.
me, I'm still deciding.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
great,
I'm
great.
still not sure.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Awesome.
Wow. I like that, systematizing your hot chip.
I love it.
preference.
I love it. I love it. I love
That's
it.
very cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So yes, chips, maketh a man. That's right.
Wow.
Indeed. Indeed. That's what we always say.
Is it?
We do on this podcast. Chips maketh the man.
That's
Wait,
it.
actually, speaking of, this is something that I'm going to ask Hudson to do as he edits this.
Yes.
It would be really cool to eventually have a little map of all the hot chips places.
Wow. Hot chip locations.
Hot
are
chip
big
locations.
Maybe you could get advertising on the back of it.
Maybe,
That's
yeah.
right.
And I think that would be a really awesome little map to put on
Okay,
the,
so
on
I
the
have
website.
no commercial connection, but Binner's Farm at Helensburgh is worth the.
Yeah, and you're the
Excellent.
first person to mention that.
and
So.
my eldest daughter lives down there, and so
Okay.
her two sons are in primary school.
Mhm.
Took up my suggestion
Unreal.
and went there, and they said, "Yes, Grandpa, definitely worth it."
Oh.
Yeah, excellent.
Put it on the map.
Put it on the map. The pin it.
Pin it.
There you go. More work for you, Hudson.
That's it. Have fun.
And can I say, I really enjoyed Hudson's podcast.
Yes.
Right, that here is a young man who reached that sort of path in his life where there was the choice between the girlfriend and church, and it's the fall down of many young Christians, and he chose right.
Mm. Yeah, I've been massively encouraged by Hudson in the last year. He's been
Yeah.
kicking
And-
lots of goals.
All the
And,
goals.
and it is a huge cliff to hang over,
Mm.
and many fall
deal.
down.
Yep.
Yeah. This is true.
And unfortunately, once you fall down just once, it's hard to get back up.
Yeah, that is true. And I think Hudson is a really good example of what happens when you truly commit to church and serving God. And he's
Absolutely.
he's been
and so
amazing.
his example extended through the commitment that he exhibited then is
Yeah.
something to be admired.
I agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
100%.
Shout out to Hudson, who should be here but
So
not
if you
here.
haven't listened, if you haven't listened to that podcast, go back and other people should listen to it.
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, 100%.
But he's the most appeared guest on Chip Lunch, whether
He is.
hosting or the guest.
Right. There you go.
But yes, I think you're right. That one was my favourite of his as well.
It is very good. That was very good.
Can we move on to the second question, Dave?
Hmm.
Because I'm very interested to hear the answer to this one. How did you become a Christian?
Okay, so I didn't come from a Christian family at all. As a matter of fact, my parents weren't anti-God,
Mm.
but they were anti-church. However, they did send us to Sunday school. I'm sure it was just to get a quiet hour on a Sunday morning.
yeah,
A
nice.
few people have said that, actually.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much in favour of having church things that encourage kids that are outside the church family,
Mhm.
which we don't do as well as we used to. And so we grew up at Sutherland, although I started life first in Five Dock, so I went to Sunday school first in Five Dock. And I can still remember one of my Sunday school teachers there when I was only 5 or 6. And then when we came to Sutherland, we went up to St John Sutherland, or sent up there, and so I've been through Sunday school all my life, and knew all the stories, knew all the things. My parents never ever came to church.
Mm.
Indeed, even when our children were baptised, our 4 kids, they were only ever able to make 2 of the 4 baptisms.
Interesting.
Sort of with good and valid reasons.
Yeah.
It wasn't sort of like, we're blowing you off, but it was never on their radar. Yeah. And my sister became a Christian. She's 18 months older than I am, a year in front of me. And so she was going up to fellowship up there in at Sutherland, which was on a Friday night in those days. And my father taught night school on Friday nights, so it was difficult for her to get up. So her 12-year-old brother used to walk the kilometre or so up to church, drop her off at now what's a 12-year-old short kid going to do, but it was better that someone was walking with her.
Yeah.
And I'd drop her off and then I'd walk back home and then I'd walk back up again. Well, it took me a couple of weeks to work out that was a bit boring. So even though I was younger than I should have been, I started going to the group at the age of 12. It should have been after you went through confirmation. And not long after we actually started going, they had a camp, as many people do, And I was 12. I didn't know anyone. No one really talked to me. I found the group initially quite boring, So I didn't want to go to the camp. And because I didn't want to go, my sister couldn't go.
Oh, right.
Which wasn't sort of necessarily a good move.
No.
And they had the camp. And then everyone came back and said all these things that they did at the camp. And I'm thinking, damn it, should have gone.
Missed.
So after that, I never missed another one.
Nice.
And then eventually became sort of the youth leader there.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a fellow called John Kidson, who was sort of like the Stu Korshaw of the 60s. and John was our youth leader. So I always felt I'd had the best youth leader training because John actually went to Moore College, but he was not an academic. And the insistence on learning Greek was his failure. And so he was not able to continue after the first year at Moore College.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so he was a man dedicated to God who couldn't do it academically, but could do it in a leadership way. So he actually, with another fellow, started YouthWorks.
Oh, really?
So instead of
That's
actually training to be a minister, he actually trained youth workers. So
Yeah,
how
good
about
on
that?
him. That's hard. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And using
So
gifts.
I've always felt that I had good training in that. So I was actually trained to be a Sunday school teacher at the age of 14 by an ex-infants mistress who was brilliant at sort of how to control kids and all that. And then trained as a youth leader by probably one of the best youth leaders of that time. And of course it was right, we're talking the 60s here, it was right in the Jesus Revolution time.
Yeah.
It was sort of, Christianity and Jesus was out there. So I was going to high school at that time. But so my sister wants to go to confirmation class. Now, I was not a Christian, but I was sort of interested, and my parents thought.
How old are you at this point?
13.
13. Yeah, cool.
And so I go along to confirmation class, and it was great because they're explaining, in effect, the Bible to you. And we actually physically learnt the Catechism off by heart and the 10 Commandments off by heart and things like that. You don't sort of do that, but you should, And so the questions in my mind that I needed to ask were being answered. And while there was a point in that time where I would have actually made that conversion time, I don't know precisely when it was, but there would have been a moment in time. I know when I started doing confirmation, I was not a Christian, but I certainly was converted by the time I finished.
Yeah, wow.
And I said this to Clive Steele, our minister at the time. And years later, when Clive retired, he said, you're the only person that was ever converted that I know of during confirmation.
No way.
Really? That's interesting.
So we had a very, a good close relationship with Clive and with his family, because my best mate last 2 years of high school was his second son. So we used to end up at his place for coffee, after.
Yeah, lovely. That's great.
And I got to see what it was like on the inside of a rectory. And Sutherland Rectory was right beside the church. So there were a lot of people knocking on that door. And I got to see what it was like from the inside and got to appreciate the life he was going through. You have that sort of similar experience. You know the phone calls your dad would make and take and the things you have to do. And I think most people just don't appreciate how full on being a pastor is.
Yeah, I think that's true from what I observe.
Yeah. And particularly when the rectory was right there beside the church, so that there were people knocking on the door for the key for the hall, or there were people looking for a handout, or there were people who had the need for prayer, and there was a constant run of people at that door. And so I was privileged for a couple of years, having virtually lived inside a rectory with my best mate. Unfortunately, at the moment now is sort of in a nursing home and almost immobile. So I'm sort of getting to that age where some of my friends are sort of not getting as active as they could be. So I figure I got maybe good 10 years left. I've tried to wear my body out.
Yeah.
I've been pretty kind to it.
Yeah.
Can I ask you? So was there a moment in time, like in those teenage years, where you recognised that something had really changed and you knew you were a Christian, or was it just a really gradual process?
No. It was definitely a rollover from being a listener to a doer.
Okay.
Yeah, absolute change. And then, so that's sort of 13, 14, I'm teaching scripture. I started to get involved with SEBS, and by about and then in year 10, so I was the second year through on the Wyndham scheme, which was the year 12. So up until that stage, people only went to year 5. Was now year 6 in high school.
Yeah.
And
or
we
fifth form, wasn't it called? Was it called that? Yeah.
Right. That's right. So the guys in front of us were the first year through.
Okay.
And we were the second year. And we were involved with a group at school called ICF, Inner School Christian Fellowship.
Yeah.
Is it still around?
Yeah, I've heard of it, yeah.
Oh, I'd run the lunchtime group at Kirrawee High is technically an ICF group.
Right.
We don't call it that, but it is.
What do we call it?
That's right.
We call it BYO lunch.
Because it's not chip lunch anymore.
It's not allowed to be called chip lunch.
Why is it not allowed to be called chip lunch?
Well, we don't bring chips, and
You're not allowed to share the chips.
we're not allowed to share the chips, and so we were asked to change the name, and so we changed it to BYO chips. BYO lunch.
BYO lunch, which is what you usually do on
It's just
a
normal
Friday.
lunch.
Or is it Friday?
But
Yeah,
you still
yeah.
have it at lunchtime though, don't you?
Yeah.
It's
right.
exactly the same as usual, just without chips.
So you can imagine high school in the 60s.
I don't know if I can, actually.
Well, if you've seen Jesus Revolution,
Yeah.
you get a little bit of an idea there.
Yeah.
So you had the hippie crew, which usually involved drugs. And our future school captain was the drug dealer in Ginelli Boys.
Amazing.
And he used to make badges, because badges were the thing in the 60s, make love not war, and blah, blah. And so I
You have one of those little
set up in
clamp,
opposition to
stampy
him
things.
and provided Christian badges so that the Christian guys could also wear, because you could wear them at school.
Yeah.
And so it was, I learned how to, so we didn't often make the badges. You get some other badge and you'd paint over the top in fluoro paint and all that sort of stuff.
Unreal.
So I actually found just yesterday a badge I made in the 60s, which was out of a hammered out jam tin. And
Awesome.
Because it was a big badge. It was hard to get really big badges. And I had the whole Ten Commandments written on the badge.
Unreal.
That's a large badge.
Can you take a photo of it and send it through to us? And Hudson will
I
put it on
have
the
it with
screen.
me.
That'd be really cool. Have you got
Yeah,
it?
let's have a look.
Hold it up to the camera if you can.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. So, I had lost it for many years.
Oh, look at the
that
size
is
of this.
Unreal. Oh, wow. You do have the 10 Commandments on it. Oh, that is sick.
So how do you do it with it? You just hammer it out?
Yeah.
To make it that way?
Yeah, so I wanted to be an engineer from year 8. And so I like building stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So I build motor cars and timber and
Were you
fiberglass
a
and,
tinkerer, as they like to call it? Like to tinker with things?
well, yeah, a sort of model maker.
Mm.
Yep.
How did you end up getting it all,
Yeah,
like
you-
writing it on there?
Have you painted it?
So you paint the background
Yep.
Yeah.
and then you black out the words, so it's like reverse writing.
Huh.
Like as a stencil?
No, it's done with a nib pen.
Wow. How long did that take you to do that?
It would have taken
I've
ages.
no idea.
Would have taken
but,
ages.
Probably, I probably did it in a couple of batches.
Yeah, wow.
A couple of hours.
That's unreal.
That was really cool. I love that a lot.
What a great thing to keep for such a long time
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So that's probably 67.
Can you? What's it? You were talking about the hippies, and there was obviously different groups like the Christian group and stuff.
Yep.
Can you paint a picture of what it was like in the 60s for us, and how it's different today, in terms of growing up in that time?
People knew whether you're a Christian or not.
Oh,
It was freely spoken about,
Mhm.
talked about,
that's interesting. Yeah.
and you would have Christian conversations with non-Christians, whereas nowadays it's almost taboo to talk about these things. Christians didn't employ people to work in the church; they did it. So people were working full time, and I had a full time job. I was doing part time uni, and I was the youth leader and the SEBS leader,
Yep.
and teaching Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Burnout was never an issue. People are worried about burnout, so they hold back on what they do.
Mm.
You know, the old job is, if you want a job done, give it to a busy man.
Mm-hmm.
We waste a lot of time in life. I've talked about, sleep patterns and that. I probably survive on 5 or 6 hours a night,
Wow.
and don't watch too much television. I'll listen to a podcast while I'm in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sort of not spending the time that I would lose elsewise. I'll knock off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and daylight saving I can work outside for half a day, another 4 hours.
Yeah.
We waste as Christians so much time that we could be doing with other things.
What do you put that down to? Why do you think that's true?
Why do I think it's true?
Yeah, or why do you think that happens? Sorry.
I think we weren't challenged enough. Right? It was too easy. Back in the day, it was in your face. The hippie movement was big, and the Jesus movement was a reaction to that.
Mm.
That it was free sex, free drugs. It was everything that was against Christianity.
Like in kind of indulgence.
Total indulgence. Nowadays, the indulgence is much more subtle.
Yeah.
Mm.
There it was in your face. So it's still there, and it still drags people away. The ability to go and live with your girlfriend. The accepted thing.
Yeah.
Right? It happened in the 60s, but it was a bigger thing then. And it's a huge issue with sort of, in youth work. How do you address these issues? With the school, I was involved with the ICF group, and the people before me who should have taken over the leadership from the year 5 leavers, there was no one who wanted to do it. So the fellow who had led it before actually suggested that I take it over. So I'm year 10, taking over leading a group a year below, which meant that I was actually the ICF leader for 3 years, which was great.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Right. And we went to Janelli Men's College, you might have known as Jelly Boys High School, but
Mm.
it was.
Well, I think we've only ever known it as the Janelli High School because they
Oh.
combined them, right?
So the girls' school was 200 metres down the road,
Right.
Yeah, right.
and they broke off 10 minutes apart with the theory that the boys would be able to walk down to the station, and that there wouldn't be such a congestion on the road with the girls walking down to the station. But did you know in the afternoon it takes you 10 minutes to walk 200 metres?
I was going to say, it's if they're not waiting.
Yeah.
And in
That's
year
funny, yes.
in year 12, I was only one of 7 guys that had a car to drive to school,
Mhm.
which was a Volkswagen,
Awesome.
which
Unreal.
is a story in itself.
Is it a Beetle?
Yeah, a Beetle,
Mhm.
yes. You can fit 7 people in a Beetle on a regular basis.
If you're trying really hard.
Yeah. So
How many people are sitting on laps like that? That's
we
awesome.
had 2 seatbelts in the front,
Yep.
which was a bit revolutionary.
Yeah.
And so I used to actually charge people the bus fare
Oh.
to. Well, yeah.
That's awesome.
How was I going to pay for petrol?
No.
Yeah, totally.
That's right.
Especially if you're dropping
Particularly
extra
when
people
you're
off.
trying- Yeah, when
Yeah.
there's 7 people in your car.
And so it was a Le Mans start with the cars
Yeah. You got to race to it.
to get the first park
Yeah,
before
yeah,
the
yeah.
pedestrian crossing before the girls' school.
Do you know what that means, Ethan?
No idea.
So at Le Mans, they used to the drivers would start on the other side of the circuit, and the cars are parked along the circuit, and they'd like fire a
Had to
gun
run.
or wave a flag, and you have to run to get into the driver's
That's
seat and drive
awesome.
away.
Why don't? Do they still do that?
No, why do you think they've not doing it anymore?
I can't think of any reason other than
Too
injury.
many people would have died or been injured.
Yeah.
Died.
Yeah,
Oh, I guess because you're still running to your car and other people are going. Eh?
yeah. That's it.
Whoa, that is dangerous.
Yeah.
Or someone would just have an accident or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Super dangerous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super dangerous.
Yeah.
Super
If
dangerous.
you had thought about the idea now to start it now, you'd never be
Yeah.
allowed to do it.
Yeah. Well, Le Mans got a big history of a lot of people dying. So I think it's 55. A huge amount of people died in 1955.
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
oh no, sorry, 1955.
1950.
Oh,
Oh, right.
But it was a huge.
55
There was a huge
people.
accident at Le Mans in 1955. I think I'll have to check that, but that's a.
But that's what
a
you
bit
mean
of-
by a
that's
Le
bit
Mans
of fun.
start.
Yeah,
the,
that's
the
it.
run to the car.
Yeah,
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, so so I was driving the Beetle, but with the boys' school and the girls' school, of course, it was never the twain shall meet,
mm.
except there was one group that combined activities between the two, and that was the ICF. So occasionally
you can-
we would have things.
That's attractive to some people.
Yeah, you can see where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
here, right?
yeah.
So we hadn't done that before. So, I actually started to do things with the girls' school. So occasionally in the hall we'd have a meeting where the girls would come and the boys would come at the same time. And of course our attendance at ICF would go up dramatically.
Oh,
those
through the
days.
roof.
Skyrocket.
Right. And I would be so often going over to the girls' school to organise things. And you can imagine a boy walking into the girls' school at lunchtime was sort of like,
Scandal.
the wolf whistles were happening the other way.
Oh, that's funny as. That's
Right.
great.
So you had to go to the deputy head to get a permission to leave the school. And the deputy head got so sick of me asking for permission to go over to the girls' school that he signed a piece of paper, and I still have it because it was signed on the 6th of the 6th, 1966.
Nice.
What a great day.
That's a great day. That's awesome.
That David Gaskell could go to the girls' school whenever he is required.
Excellent.
Wow,
What a leap past to have.
That's awesome. That's so good.
very good. As an aside, Le Mans 1955, it was a big accident. It killed 83 spectators and injured more than 120.
Because the car went off into the...
I think so. I forget. French driver Pierre Lever. Yep, was the most catastrophic crash in motorsport history.
Yes, that's crazy.
But that wasn't because of the Le Mans starts. But yeah,
But no. But that's like just Le Mans.
this is back in the 50s. They just had hay bales around the circuit. And
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
That's
right.
what
Yeah,
it was.
Which helps you launch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
That's what would happen. Or they'd catch on fire. That's the other thing that would happen.
That's right. Where's the risk in that?
That's right. Well, this is the time they probably weren't even wearing seatbelts either.
And they
so-
didn't have seatbelts in the
No.
cars.
My goodness.
Because the theory was you were safer to be thrown out of the car.
Yes, that is.
Yeah,
that,
right.
That was the theory. That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
If you survived the throw, you're okay.
Mm.
Because you would not survive the crash.
Yeah, right. Okay.
What's a broken bone versus being crushed
Yeah.
or burnt to death?
Or burnt to death.
That's what we say on this podcast.
We do. We say that. We say chip maketh man, and we say what's a broken bone or being burnt to death.
So you're running the ICF group.
Yeah. So I remember on one particular occasion, we were having a group there. So typically, again in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of Christian bands,
Right. Yeah. Yep.
and so we had actually paid for this Christian band to come, and they'd play a few songs. The band leader would give a short talk, and that was the sort of the formula.
Yep.
And we were actually had to pay for this group to come, and we had funds, and one of the guys on the committee said we should charge people to come. And I was a bit against that because I thought, that's going to stop people coming. He said, no, if they charge them to come, then they'll really want to come. So we did,
Yep.
sort of like, I couldn't see the value in it, but, and so we charged them, it was like 20 cents, right? So it was like probably equivalent of $5.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
And you've only just switched to dollars and cents in this year, is that right?
Yeah.
1966.
We did. In 66, yes. Yeah, been through that. Right. I'll tell you a story about uni later, because when I was at uni, it was the year we swapped from inches and feet to
From
metric.
imperial to metric.
So all the textbooks were in imperial, and all the exams were in metric.
Oh, sounds like Ethan's worst nightmare.
Oh my goodness, I would die.
So I would talk about 100
Sorry,
meters.
It's my worst nightmare before we get to the conversion. The fact that there's exams that need numbers and textbooks that need numbers, there's my nightmare.
And then
It
just
is
gets
only,
worse.
it just gets worse. It
That's
just gets worse.
That's why I said worst.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
no,
nightmare,
no.
but it turns into the worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So we're having this meeting, and we actually got quite good sales because there wasn't much happening at lunchtime,
Unreal.
and we were over 50% of the school is coming to this thing. which
Awesome.
was absolutely fantastic. Now on the day of the event, now Ginelli Boys High School at the time was just a group of portables. There was no cover at all of
Really?
any sort,
Yeah, right.
and the heavens opened
Ah.
in such a way. So the only place where there was cover or warmth or wet was actually in the hall. So we went from about 60%, and basically anyone who had the 20 cents was in the hall.
That's awesome.
And I went outside, and there was about 20 or 30 guys outside, and I said, well, why don't you come in? He said, we haven't got any money. Come on.
Come in. Yeah.
Right. So when the guy was actually doing his talk, and all the teachers are in as well, because all the kids are there, and so they're
Well, yeah, they've got to be
supervising.
there.
They've got
Yeah,
to supervise.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually ran around the school just to check, and there were 2 boys in the entire school who weren't in there.
That's
And I said to them, look, come along, you can come in, it's free. Mate, I would never go to a place like that.
Yeah,
Well, okay, you're one of the 2 people.
Yeah, 2.
So we actually had virtually the whole school in.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So God provided this enormous thunderstorm,
Unreal.
and so it goes to show what can be done.
Yeah.
It's a cool highlight. I really like that.
Also, what's the school doing having no undercover areas outside at all? That's so weird. What if it rained again?
But also, like, letting them host a gig at
Yeah.
lunchtime, like, that's unreal.
Yeah.
Like, that is so cool.
Yeah,
Like, would be completely
you remember
unheard
the
of.
name of the band?
I can't.
Okay.
I can't. I can't remember what the name of one of the bands that was around. It was called the Believers,
Okay.
Right.
And so they're a Christian rock
a
band.
Christian. Yeah, because at the same time there was a Monkeys band called the Monkeys
Yep.
that had that I am a believer.
Yeah.
So we reckon that the believer should have a song saying "I am a monkey." But there were a lot of Christian bands. Almost every church had their own homegrown band.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, right. So do you have a question?
No, it was not a question. It was just a thought. And the thought
Well, you
was
have to say
simply...
now.
Okay, I'll have to say it now. I've just been laughing with some friends about recently. So we went to a Christian music festival on the weekend called One. It's cool. And the idea is they're trying to get Christians in bands and support them and get that vibe going. We were just talking about the lack of a Christian music scene.
Oh.
And
compared with the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
that's it, right? Like
Even in the 90s, there was a scene.
totally. And I was just laughing about the fact that actually the creative outlet at the moment is we've got nothing. So instead of, we've got nothing to do, let's pick up some instruments and learn to play an instrument. It's we've got nothing to do as friends, let's start a podcast. It's really real. It's really real.
Yeah, but that's the genre of the time, isn't
That's
it?
it. Exactly
Yeah.
right. In the same way that like everyone was making grunge music and like it was just what you did.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, God has given me some talents, but none musically
Oh,
Same here.
at all.
Okay.
And my children sort of said, "Dad, look, you can't sing. We've got this sort of game on the TV where it's a karaoke,
Oh, yeah,
darling,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it
yeah.
shows you your pitch as a graph."
Yes.
And I'm an engineer, so graphs and numbers, they sort of
graph.
work.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can actually see the picture where you should be
Yep.
and the picture where you are,
Yeah.
right? So you could sort of
Awesome.
figure adjust it. Okay, so they thought that was a great idea. So I'm singing away there. Pew, pew, pew.
Just can't
could-
get there.
Couldn't make it.
That's great.
So
I love it.
I love music. I love listening to it.
Mm.
But no.
Hit us up with your favourite bands. Come on.
Well, my favourite bands probably are non-Christian bands.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Beatles sort of era,
Yep.
so that would have to be pretty good. And a sort of a very non-Christian band, I actually enjoy Queen. Just from the stirring sort of music.
Yep.
But there were many good Christian bands at the time. I actually enjoy sort of like the early Hillsong music. I was in an accommodation place in Uganda, and so we're having a meal at night in Kampala, and as we're having our meal, what is playing in the background? Hillsong music. So it's music which played all around the world. And I know there are some churches in Sydney who won't play it. And that's sad, because it really is such an excellent sort of avenue of getting the word across. So everywhere I've been around the world, they play Australian Christian music.
Yeah, it's wild, eh?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I like early Queen. I don't know if you heard. There's one where there's a live recording from it might be like 75 or 76. I think it's somewhere in England. I forget where it is, but that's a really good album. I enjoyed that. Anyway, back to Dave. So you were the only. Not many people went on to year 12 at that time. Most people finished in the year 10 or fifth form, like you said.
Probably half, a bit more than half. Yep.
So what you always wanted to be an engineer? Is that what was your plan
Always
to go to
wanted
uni?
to be an engineer from year 8.
Right.
Right, I wanted to be an engineer.
Yep.
Because I like building stuff. I had a Meccano set, and
Yeah, I had one.
and I was always out. I was damming the gutter at the front of our house and watching the water flow. So my love of hydraulics sort of came from
Oh, that's interesting, isn't
that.
it?
Yeah. So always wanted to be an engineer. My parents couldn't afford to send me to uni. I had to pay for myself to uni, so I went part-time. So I worked full-time, and I went to uni 3 or 4 nights a week.
So there's no HEX at this time, is there? That doesn't come until the 80s, so or late 80s, I think.
So I went to uni at 69.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that you had to pay for it.
Right.
But you were before the no cost of the Whitlam government as well, right?
That's right. So, there was a small cost, nothing compared with what it is now. But you had to live and have a car, and and so I needed to earn money. And the thought of being able to go to uni without any support was just never plausible.
Yeah.
But the people who did part-time uni, only 1 in 3 ever graduated.
Oh,
Really?
Yep.
because it took so long.
That's so hard.
Right.
You have to
do
be
everything.
dedicated.
Yeah.
Right. So I went to uni. Well, I've done tertiary study 4 times, and the only time I ever did full time was actually the year I went to Bible College.
Okay.
All the other times it was part time. So I will always employ someone who's done part time study because I know that they have a work ethic
And to organise themselves.
and organise themselves.
Mm.
Because if you are not organised, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your first job out of school then?
So my first job out of school was with the Water Resources Commission.
Oh.
So I had 2 choices. So I applied for 17 jobs and got about 6 offers. So, but what do you know when you're a kid out of school?
Mm.
So I got offer from Sydney Water Board
Mhm.
and from the Water Resources Commission. So Sydney Water Board looks after the water in Sydney, and Water Resources everywhere else.
Okay. Yeah.
And I thought, I've seen Sydney, I'll see the world. Well, New South Wales anyway.
Unreal.
And so I was with them for 11 years. And so as an undergraduate engineer to a graduate engineer.
Yeah, awesome.
So during uni holidays, they'd send us out to the country areas.
Mhm.
So I spent summer out at Burke, in where the ground temperature was 50
Oh,
degrees.
so that's going to be
It's
hot.
in Burke.
Yeah, that's right. And so I've been from Burke to Bega.
Mhm.
And one of my claims to fame is, if a town has more than 200 people, I've probably been there.
Yeah, right.
That's very cool.
So I really went all over New South Wales
Mm.
and learned about hydraulics. Got into computers very early
Mhm.
because, so I actually wrote my first computer program in 72, which is,
That's
Like-
very early.
that was mainframe,
Yeah.
Mm.
punch card.
Yeah.
So I've been an early adopter.
Mhm.
We had our first computer, which was an Apple ripoff
Mm-hmm.
in 83. That was a home computer.
Unreal.
So all my kids have grown up with computers.
Yep.
And so a lot of people of my generation never got into computers. I fortunately did.
Mm.
I had that sort of a mind.
Mhm.
I could sort of see numbers.
Yep.
And work things out.
That's unreal.
Can I ask you where the love of like engineering and building stuff, what do you love getting from that?
Something working.
And like kind of figuring out how to make it work?
Well, one of my gifts is to be able to come in late on a project where everyone else has sort of got we can't make it work,
Mm-hmm.
and come in and making it happen.
Finding the solution.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also to be able to explain things in a way that a person who's not an engineer can understand and see.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
And sometimes in Christian circles we get so tied up with being academic. Too many Christians are super academics and not hard Christians.
Mm.
And I was involved with the Beach Mission for many years. I've been involved in Beach Mission for much of my Christian life. And before marriage, we were involved up at Port Macquarie. And almost all of the group up there were studying for Teachers College or uni or whatever, which is unusual because probably only 20% of the population in those days would have gone to uni.
Mm.
So we had a bad mix, if you like. It was sort of all academics.
Yeah, right.
And there was one girl called Jenny. And Jenny was the checkout chick who left school at 14 years and 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And was always a bit slow at getting the jokes. And unfortunately, as people often do, they would often make jokes at her expense.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't get it.
Mm.
And we ran the youth group up there. And again, back in the day, the formula was very simple. You had a band, you had free coffee,
Yep.
people came,
Yep.
and you talked to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an old house in Port Macquarie which was due to be demolished, and a Christian real estate agent had got it for us. So it's a stripped out house, right smack dab in the middle of the shopping centre.
Unreal.
So not down at the campsite. And we would go there, we'd have a band. Of course, there was only one volume. You know, we're talking the, you know.
10.
Yeah, crank it.
So
To
you
11.
didn't need advertising sounds.
No,
you know.
awesome.
And then, you know, somebody would give a talk, and then we'd sit around and have coffee, and people would talk. At the end of the 10 days, because we would keep cards on people who had made decisions, out of the team of about 12 people, half of the people who made a decision for the Lord had talked to Jenny.
Yeah, wow.
Because she didn't try to prove and argue. She just
Yeah, it's beautiful.
brought the gospel.
It's really cool.
So she was more effective than all the rest of the team combined. And God uses people
Yeah,
who
totally.
want to be used,
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And allow themselves to be used as well.
who allow themselves to be used,
Mm.
who don't sort of put up, oh, I've got to go and study this, or, you know, I'm not ready for it. Well, yes, you are. You know, have you ever read the story of Moses? So here's Moses at the burning bush. You know, this is pretty dynamic, right?
Yep.
He spent his first 40 years learning how the court in Cairo works. You know, he gets the University of Cairo to sort of. He would have had the best education.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He could read and write.
Mm.
We know that because he wrote the Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
You wrote a lot of it.
Right? Right. Which again is something very dramatic. He probably, well, he would have certainly. He used the alphabet, which would have been brand new at that time.
Right.
Because the priests used hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
Mm.
He used the alphabet. Probably even Joseph used the alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
He's then spent the next 40 years in the desert being prepared for how to move around the desert and find water holes. He would have known every water hole in that area that he was at. Then God says, okay, you ready? Puts on the fire show of all times. Here's a burning bush. You know, he walks up there. He's talking to God face to face. And God says, now, Moses, I've got a great plan for you. I'm going to go back to Egypt. Moses says, yes, but 6 times. Yes, but I can't talk. Yes, but I'm not ready. Yes, but what are they going to do?
It does do that, yeah.
6 times. He eventually goes. Right. So the people like Elijah, God says, I want you to go to the king and say, hey, it's not going to rain for 3 months. And by the way, you know, he might kill you because you do that. He does.
Yep.
And there's the difference between the people who say, yes, but I can't do it because I need to go on a holiday, or I'm still working full time, or haven't got the time, or I've got 4 kids. And there's the people who say yes. And that's what we need.
I sense like, from what you're saying there, do you feel a bit frustrated that people aren't giving more for the gospel?
I don't worry about what other people give to the gospel. I only worry about what I can give to the gospel.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And hopefully that's an example.
Mm.
So, you know, I've taught scripture for 15 years and worked full time.
Mm.
And the people who've taught with me, some of them have also been working full time and have sort of said, well, you can do it, I can do it. And a lot of my scripture kids are surprised that, you know, I'm not a retired old guy sort of who's using his spare time to teach scripture, that I actually do work full time. And sometimes it comes down to I've got a, you know, big important meeting on a large job or teaching scripture. Never a question. So I will tell people I am not available.
For that period of time, you're like,
That's it.
block it out. I'm not coming.
It's blocked out in my diary. That's right. That still doesn't mean that people won't call meetings. We're sorry, we can see you're not available. The meeting's at 10 o'clock. No, sorry. 10:30, I got something else on. What do you got on? I teach a class. What do you teach? I teach scripture to year 5 and 6 at Kirrawee Public School. Yeah, but this is an important meeting. This is our kickoff meeting. Okay, I'll be there at 11 o'clock.
Unreal.
Pretty mad witness. Like, that's
really
pretty cool. So you said that you worked for the Water
Resources
Board for 11 years.
11 years, yep.
What happened during that time? Like, so you obviously travelled around a lot.
Yep.
But then you've said you've got kids. So when did you meet your wife? I don't even know your wife's name. Sorry.
Okay, so
Sue.
my wife, Sue,
Yeah.
was, we started going around when she was 15 years old.
Hmm.
2 weeks before she turned 16, which is a bad mistake.
Oh, why is that?
What do you buy for the 16th birthday for someone you've been going around with for two weeks? Yeah.
A hat? I don't know.
Well, yeah. Anyway, so I gave her flowers. which-
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
beautiful.
That's good.
No.
Oh, bad move.
Bad move. Yeah, that's right. So we won't go there. So, and
That's a bad move. I love that. What else can you do?
Yeah.
so,
What was the other option?
So again, I used to take a lot of people home after fellowship.
Yep.
And I used to take a couple of guys home that lived right down the end of Oak Road. And my wife lived in Oak Road. Her family still lives in Life Road. The family's actually lived in Oak Road for 100 years.
Mm.
And we'd drop them off at the head of the street,
Mhm.
and then sort of go down and drop the other guys off. And then one day I dropped them off first and dropped her off last.
Mhm.
That's it, is it?
Excellent. Yeah.
And then we went out for a couple of years, and then I thought it was getting a bit serious,
Mhm.
and I wasn't quite ready for, I was not. I was sort of I would have been 21 or something at the time,
Mhm.
and she was doing HSC,
Mhm.
and so I thought I was teaching her to drive in a Volkswagen, of course,
Awesome. Of course.
and so Oak Road at the time had no lights. There was a stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And so you had to come up hill, handbrake, start, and brake onto 6 lanes of traffic.
Awesome. Oh
with
my
it,
goodness.
Right? So you learnt to drive pretty
Yeah.
well. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm teaching Sue how to drive, and she was a good driver. And I had decided that I would break it off with her after she got a license, because I figured once she got a license, she had a bit of freedom. She could, go places. Didn't need me to carry it. Right? And so she goes for a license, and she comes out all upset that she's failed, and I'm upset too. And she thought I was sort of I was sorry that she didn't. I was, because I was going to break it off the next day.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
She failed it twice.
She's a good driver, he says.
And then eventually, when she passed, I broke it off. And it was 6 weeks before her high school certificate. It was a bit tight. I thought if she fails it another time, I can't do it.
Mm.
And she actually then studied hard for the next 6 weeks and got a good mark, which was good.
Mm.
And then a year later, after we'd been out with a couple other people, we started going back around again. And I think that was good for our relationship, because it wasn't just, we've been there forever. It was then a positive decision that this is the right person for me.
Mm.
And in actually 2 weeks' time, we'll celebrate 50 years of marriage.
Good on you. That's really
Wow.
exciting.
That's awesome.
That's really, really cool.
So it must have been good. And we're partners in our work,
Yeah, it's really lovely. That's really cool.
What's her role, sorry? She works with you? Is that what you meant?
What's Sue's role?
Yeah. Oh, no, you said she's a teacher. You said that before,
she's a teacher. So
High
she
school
teaches in
teacher?
Newborough. A lot of people will know her.
Okay. She's a high school teacher, though.
Yeah, and high school teacher, and she does a fantastic job.
She does.
That's awesome. Oh, you've been taught by her?
No, but she is well loved.
Yeah, so you're like, she definitely does a good job. And you're like, but you haven't been in a class?
No.
But I'm sure
But I have
does.
friends.
I have friends. Okay, so how long did it take you to finish uni, though? That was the other question I had.
So it was normally 7 years
Mm-hmm.
to do the part-time course. But halfway through that, I got married,
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
because we were engaged for about 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
We were engaged for about 18 months, and I had to wait for Sue to actually start earning money before we could get married. I couldn't support her on my wage, And in actual fact, when she started work, she was earning more money than I was because I was still an undergraduate. And we'd bought a house 6 months before, which is another story in itself. And so I'd lived there by myself. And we then had to pay for that house. And so she's at teacher college, I'm at uni. But when she starts teaching, she's probably going to need the car to get to the school. We have one car. We actually had 3 cars before we got married, but we actually to buy the house, I sold my first beach buggy, which is a huge mistake. and I sold all my cars, and we had one car. So I transferred to UTS, which was available by train. Trying to get to University of New South Wales by public transport is at 9:30 at night. It's just not happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I transferred to UTS, and the subjects didn't quite match up. So effectively, I lost a year because I had to go and redo certain or do subjects that weren't on the list. So it took me 8 years, and it was probably 9 years before I then graduated. And so I'm graduating after working for 9 years. I'm doing the work of an engineer, very experienced. And because I work for the government, our seniority was based on when you graduated.
Oh, right.
And the full-time guys who had no experience graduated 2 weeks before the part-time guys.
Yeah.
And so a fellow who's raw out of uni, out of school, knew nothing, is 2 weeks more senior than I am. And so 2 years after graduating, I left the government because it was, I'm teaching them how to do the work. I'd been doing computer programs. I'd sort of, done half a career.
Yeah.
I went on to, write a book and lecture at university, and these guys knew nothing.
Yeah.
So I went to work for the private enterprise and worked for pipe manufacturers. And we went, got a car, wow, and an expensive car. And when I applied for my second job, I had no idea. I didn't really want to get the job, it just sort of, I'd never applied for another job, you know. And so they got to the bottom of the form and they sort of had that question at the bottom, what do you expect to be paid? So I wrote down a stupid number.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. I love that.
Right?
Yeah, right.
But so I'm doing part-time uni. I've got a wife. A couple of years later, we have a child. I still haven't graduated. Sue gives up work. And all of a sudden, the money goes down by half. We've still got a mortgage. Then we've got this thing that costs money. It's called a baby,
Gross.
Yeah. And so I had a side business, Dave Gaskell Photographics.
Oh.
And back in the day, sales tax on photography gear was 27.5%. But if you ran a business, you could get an exemption on the sales tax. So I used to run a business and sell a few photographs, but make a loss every year.
Yeah.
So I could get the tax-free benefit.
Yeah, awesome.
So when Katie's born, I can see that the money pool is going to dry up real quick. So I ramped up the photography business, and I ramped it up a bit too well. So I'm working full time, going to uni part time, and running a photography business.
Yeah.
Plus church.
Madness.
Right?
Plus still doing everything at church.
Yeah.
And I was actually making more money out of the photography business than I was working full time.
Really?
Yeah.
And I modified. So I had my own colour processing lab. So I was into colour processing. Again, early adopter before most people would do it. And
Dark room, red lights, that kind of thing? or
What?
dark room.
Yeah,
red
complete
lights,
dark
that-
room.
that
So I
stuff, yeah.
converted the loft in our house
Yeah, awesome.
to a dark room, so it was a safe area away from the kids.
Yep.
So complete colour dark room, automatic machines for
Yeah, sick.
processing the paper, and I had taken a machine that's supposed to take just a single sheet at a time and modified it to take a strip of film so that I could take a soccer team with 12 people, have the 12 people on the one strip and push it through, you see. And I buy this new machine and then and I modified it, and a month or two in, something breaks on the machine. Great. So it's under warranty, but I'm afraid that they're going to look at what I've modified to the machine and sort of say, yeah, your warranty's out. So the technician comes and he's, and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm in trouble here. You know. So I have to get their parts that come back. So he comes back. I said, I really need it like tomorrow, And he comes back with a sales manager. And they're more interested in how I've modified their machine. Make it work.
I thought that might be where you're going.
Yeah,
with that. Yeah, that's cool.
great.
I'm an engineer. I can't help myself.
I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
That's right.
You got to play.
So they offer me the second mini lab in Sutherland-Shire. So at the time there was a place called Jockleet in Miranda Fair. There was one mini lab, and I was offered the second one.
Wow, that's cool.
Because I obviously demonstrated that I knew my stuff.
Mm.
And it was the year I was going to graduate. Photography, engineering.
Yeah.
And I like both. But you don't spend 8 years studying.
No.
So I stuck with the engineering.
Fair.
Oh, really?
But I still take pretty good photos.
Okay. I was going to ask you though, because you let slip to me that you run your own engineering business now.
Yes.
Is that where you thought you were headed in anyway, given that you were doing the photography stuff? Is that do those kind of skills come together to go like, oh, this is what I should be doing?
So I worked for the pipe manufacturing, came for James Hardy Pipes and Vinidex, tube makers. Vinidex is a well-known brand. Was the state sales manager, got a national role, got a trip to America to, free 3-week trip to America to research and, great junket. And then I took over one of their sections which was in trouble and sort of sorted out their troubles, and then realised that the product that we were developing was always going to fail, and told them it was better to shut this section down because they were on a road to nowhere. And they basically offered me anything I wanted after we did that, because I saved them,
Yeah.
And I said, I want you to retrench me. I wanted to start my own business.
Yeah, cool.
So you use that money to start.
So I got the cash money, and I think it was about $50,000 or something at the time. We're talking 88, which was still like a significant amount of money.
Yeah, that time.
And that just disappeared, And so I started David Gaskell and Associates. Took me ages to think up that name. And it really did. I mean, you're trying to work out a name for
Yeah.
And I'd been dealing with water filtration, and we'd sold some of these filters that had issues, and some of the clients came back to me and sort of said, how can we fix this and how can we fix that? And so you start your own business, you're trying to find work, and and I was working for the Public Works Department one day a week, and for my old firm one day a week, and so I started going out to some of the big swimming pools that we'd installed some of these filters in and helping them out. And we helped them out with one thing, and I said, look, there's a problem with your pump here. I can hear the bearings are going to go. If we need to change the bearing, can you do that? Yeah, why not? Can you do that? Oh, yeah, why not? Can you do that? Yeah, why not? And so without planning, I built a support system in commercial swimming pools. So have you ever been to Sutherland Aquatic Centre?
Yep.
So the last pool, the third pool on the end, that's my pool.
The water polo one?
The water polo one.
Yep.
So David Gaskell and Associates helped design it.
Unreal.
And my construction firm, Hydro Fix, built it.
Unreal.
Didn't build the pool shell, but we did all
Yeah, all the plumbing.
So I convinced the council to split the contract between building the pool shell and doing all the pumps and the pipes.
That's great.
And so I designed it, then I bid on it, and we won it.
Awesome.
And it's the plant room is still operating now. 30 years on, still got the same gear in it.
Killing it.
You know,
That's
so,
great.
Because it's the Dave Gaskell does
That's
it.
it. That's it. We do it well.
right.
Yeah. Pool maketh a man.
Yeah. So I
true.
fell into a business that I had not planned to do, and then worked for 12 years doing that. And so there's about 60 big pools. I didn't do. I mean, we designed small domestic pools. That was easy. So there are 60 commercial pools in Sydney. I worked on probably 40 of them. North Sydney Pools, Wingra Aquatic Centre, lot of the big private school pools, Cranbrook High, Australia's Wonderland at the time. And I had a good reputation. Hydrofix was a name suggested to me by a client, because the first person whose job I worked on had been installed by a fellow called Hydro Leisure. And he said, you can't keep calling yourself David Gaskell and Associates. You've got to have he says, why don't you call yourself Hydrofix? Because I'm fixing up this guy's problems, you see.
That's great.
Seemed like a cute name.
Love it.
And of course, the fellow who owned the other business was rapeable, but
furious.
He was a crummy installer anyway, so it didn't. And so I still operate under that name today.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah, cool.
In 2000, I sold the business but didn't sell the name.
Yeah, okay.
Kept the name, and then I started working for large corporate engineers.
Yep.
People who had 5,000 to 10,000 employees.
Yeah, cool.
International firms.
Yep.
And dealing in pipelines.
Yep. Unreal.
And by that stage, I'd written a textbook on pipeline design, which was used at TAFEs. Still a recognised thing. Vinidex, if you go on their website, the textbook is basically their website. So I had a bit of a reputation in the industry, and hit the ground with the big boys, and
Unreal.
and so the largest job I ever did was a job in Iran.
Yeah.
Can I pause you on that though? So why don't we wait until next episode where you can tell us
Right.
about that? Would that be all right? It's a bit of the cliffhanger. I want to hear about
Sounds good.
because you also said you've been to Uganda too. I remember you saying that. So let's leave it for the next episode, and we'll be back to hear about Dave's
Sounds good.
intrepid adventures. We'll be back.
What's it like to be a Christian for you in a workplace, particularly one that's moving around all the time? And
Okay, so